everybody, Tekking101 here, and I am here today to tell you all a tale. A tale about a series that I hope to be reviewing for many years to come. This is a story about superheroes and superheroines, about villains that threaten to destroy the world, all with unique abilities. And not to mention, there's a whole lot of smashing involved, so let's get right into it. This is the story of My Hero Academia! Now keep in mind, this video is only going to give you a brief recap of each arc in the series, as well as the characters that are introduced. I can't go into great detail on everything. Not even every chapter is going to be covered here, but this is only about a 100 chapter long series, so it shouldn't take you that long to get caught up, but this will give you a decent idea. Maybe you've just seen the anime and you're, curious of what's going to happen after that and where to start off after the anime ends, or something like that. This is the video for you. So let's start with a little bit of background, shall we? Okay, so the series of My Hero Academia takes place in Japan, in sort of a parallel universe where everybody has superpowers. It's become sort of commonplace for people to have superpowers that are referred to as quirks. How this started is, mired in mystery. We don't really know exactly. All we get is that a long time ago in China, there was a baby that was born that was glowing, and boom, everybody had superpowers after that. I'm sure it's going to be explained later on, but that's all we know at the moment. Now, our main character is a kid by the name of Izuku Midoriya, who's a 14-year-old kid who's about to enter high school. Now, Izuku is the 4th generation after the superpower phenomenon occurred. So that means his parents are the 3rd generation, grandparents are 2nd, great-grandparents are 1st. So we're talking probably close to 100 years since mankind started developing superpowers that this kid is born. So it's basically become just a normal part of everyday life. You have schools that teach kids how to use their superpowers properly. You have professions such as being a superhero, but there's others where you're allowed to use your superpowers. Of course, you also have supervillains that threaten the world with their abilities and disregard the law. And how do you fight against supervillains? Well, you need to have superheroes, of course. So there's basically a ranking on the most popular and the most effective superheroes in the world. And the #1 superhero in this world is a man named All Might. And he is basically the exact replica. He's like the physical embodiment of the American Golden Age comic book superhero, such as Superman, basically. He relies on his fists to handle every situation. All of his techniques are named after states and cities in the United States of America. His trademark attack, of course, being the Detroit Smash! I'm not great at that yet. We're moving on. Okay. Now, despite most humans in this world having a superpower, not every single human does. And by the way, not all superpowers are equal. Some are more catered to combat, others are just kind of like handy little things that you can use around the house. For example, Izuku's parents have, his mother has a quirk that allows her to just float small objects toward her, and his dad, who we actually haven't met yet, has the simple ability to breathe fire. Now, Izuku, under normal circumstances, would have developed one of, or a combination of these quirks, but he turns out to be part of the minority of society that doesn't develop any quirk whatsoever, which means, of course, he's teased by all the students that do have superpowers, and he's pretty much the only one that doesn't. His childhood friend, and who will eventually become his rival in his teenage years, is a man by the name of Katsuki Bakugo. Now, Bakugo's quirk allows him to explode anything he touches, so it's a very useful ability. He's sort of seen as a child prodigy that's going to be, going places, going to become a hero someday. He's a very short-fused, very hot-headed young man who essentially despises Izuku for being worthless, and he gives him his nickname, Deku, which is used by much of the main cast throughout the series. Now, the first chapter kicks off with Izuku actually meeting All Might as he gets caught up in being attacked by a villain. He asks All Might, somebody he's looked up to his entire life, I want to be a hero. And Izuku is completely dedicated to this. He writes notebook after notebook, keeping track of all the heroes in the world, All Might especially. His room is decked out in All Might stuff. So he finally meets his hero, and he finally asks him, even though I do not have a superpower, can I be a hero? And All Might looks at him right in the eye, and he says, no, kid, there's no way that's happening. You can't be a hero. What are you saying? You need a superpower to fight against villains. You don't have a superpower. I'm sorry. Join the police. They're just as good. Not really, but whatever. It is then revealed that All Might, despite being the #1 hero and referred to as the symbol of peace in all the world, has a startling secret. His true form is actually that of a much more frail individual. You see, a while back, All Might had this big fight with a villain that caused him extensive injuries, and he can only maintain this muscular form for about 3 hours a day. So that's as long as he can be a hero, hero, and after that he reverts into his skeleton form. So Izuku is a little bit disheartened by this. Meanwhile, there's a villain that attacks Bakugo, a slime creature that allows it to absorb Bakugo and his explosion quirk. Now Izuku, despite not having an ability at all, charges in to save his friend, who really kind of hates him, honestly. All Might sees this display of courage and manages to beat back the villain and decides that, yes, Izuku Midoriya, you too can be a hero. Now, All Might's quirk is something very unique amongst all the quirks in the world. It's referred to as one for all. It's a quirk that works sort of like an Olympic torch. One person has the power, fosters it, gives them their own power, and then passes it on to the next individual. Same thing happens there, passes on to the next one. All Might is the 8th recipient of this power, and he decides that Izuku is going to be the 9th recipient. He needs to pass his powers on as he is very weak, and he might not be able to continue being a hero for much longer. He trains Izuku to get his body ready to receive the quirk, and he's ready to enter high school. Yes, high school for superhero kids. It's basically like Sky High, you know, that old Disney movie that everybody forgot about? Yeah, okay. Well, anyway, UA is the most prestigious school in the country for training kids how to be superheroes, and anyone that graduates from UA is pretty much assured to become a pro hero, which is Izuku's dream, to help people and save people. Even without a quirk, he still wanted to do that. But now he has one. He has All Might's one for all. So after rigorous training, he receives it, and despite the fact that he got off to a shaky start, he doesn't have complete control over his quirk yet. It gives him super strength, but it just wrecks his body afterwards after, you know, throwing one punch at a robot to ace the entrance exam. His entire arm gets broken, his legs get broken when he tries to jump, so there's a long road ahead of him for trying to master this ability, but he does gain entrance to UA Academy, as well as Bakugo and a few other students that we'll meet along the way. The most of which is the kind of love relationship thing we're going here with Izuku and Ochaku Uraraka, whose quirk is the ability to levitate things with zero gravity, and we also have the student class president, Tenya Ida, whose quirk is Engine, which gives him super speed. Ida is part of a family that's all related to superheroes that have like super fast speed and stuff, and we're going to find out about that later. So there's two main classes for the freshmen of UA, Class 1A and Class 1B. They each have about 20 students. We don't really know much about Class 1B yet. I mean, we've seen a few students, but you know, I'm not really going to mention that too much in this recap. Class 1A is the one that is the main cast. It includes Izuku, Bakugo, Ochaku, Tenya Ida, as well as all the other students that are up here pretty much, and we'll go into them as we go throughout the various arcs. And so the last thing I think I should mention for this introductory part is the classroom teacher for all of these kids, and that is the pro hero Eraserhead. Eraserhead is looks like at first impressions a very disheveled man, but he's very intelligent, he's a very effective pro hero, and his quirk allows him to erase other quirks whenever he comes in eye contact with that person. So he's pretty badass. Okay, so introductions out of the way, moving on to the first main arc of the series, the Battle Test arc. All Might becomes a teacher at UA, and the first lesson he teaches the kids is how to deal in battle situations. So he sets them up into teams of 2. Half of the students are going to be the villain team trying to protect a bomb, while the other half are trying to be the hero team that are going to try to retrieve the bomb and defeat the villains. So for this trial, Izuku is teamed up with Ochako, and Ida is teamed up with Bakugo. The other students really aren't important at this phase. It's really important that Izuku is going to fight against Bakugo, and it kind of gives us an idea of exactly what the relationship was. They were friends once when they were little kids, but as they began to grow up, Izuku kept saying, you know, I want to be a hero, I want to be a hero, even though he doesn't have a quirk. That kind of pissed off Bakugo. He has a very short fuse, both figuratively and literally. Long story short, he tries to blow him up, you know, common teenage angst, essentially. However, Izuku and Ochako's team do manage to retrieve the bomb, and Bakugo has to face with the idea that he lost to Izuku. A kid that didn't have a quirk up until a few months ago now has one, and he managed to beat him. So this is a major turning point for both Izuku and Bakugo's character development, that he's starting to see Izuku begrudgingly on a level similar to himself. Not quite yet, but he's starting to realize that, you know, this is a kid that could potentially beat me later on if I'm not careful. Bakugo doesn't really relay this information too much because he's a very hot-headed guy that just wants to kill everything, essentially, but he's starting to notice that, yeah, the fire's been lit under his ass and he needs to get moving and training to try to one-up Izuku now. So the next arc is the rescue training arc, well, at least it started off to be. So the students of Class 1A all go to this huge facility outside of UA, which allows them to train in rescue scenarios. And there's all these different areas, like a like a landslide zone and a mountain zone and a shipwreck zone. So the idea is, okay, your kids are going to learn how to use your quirks to rescue individuals. The teacher that helps them this time is a teacher by the name of 13, which has the ability of black hole to suck in everything around him. He always wears a spacesuit, so we don't really know what's up with him or her. It might be a girl, I'm not really sure. Anyway, this entire training exercise gets scrapped, though, when the League of Villains attack. The League of Villains is headed by this kid named Tomura that has a quirk that allows him to disintegrate anything he touches, and his ultimate goal is to kill All Might. So we have the typical shonen scene here where all the students get separated all around the area. There's a villain by the name of Kurogiri that basically works as this ethereal warp gate. He can send people through his body into separate areas. So all the students here get a chance to fight off against the villains in real-life combat. Some of the students that get spotlighted here are Momo Yaoyoroza, with the ability to create objects out of her flesh, Kaminari Denki with the ability to shock things with his electrical powers, and Asui Suyu with the ability to become a frog and do all the things that frogs can do. Sounds really lame, but she's a pretty cool character. She's actually one of the most popular characters in the entire series, honestly. Izuku comes up with a somewhat better way to use his powers without breaking his body. He channels all of All for One's power into his fingers, so a single finger flick will cause a big, wide-scale damage without destroying his entire arm, although he breaks his fingers every time he does this. It'll do for now, although, Izuku, you really need to get better at controlling that ability, because as a main character, you're not really that, efficient when taking out the main enemies. Okay, so the students are basically all engaging in battle, and it seems like they're going to win. Ida manages to get out of the facility and go alert all the other teachers at UA. Meanwhile, All Might shows up, and it's ready for a big old-fashioned beatdown, man. However, Tomura reveals his secret weapon, Nomu. The Nomu is like an artificial human which is designed to fight All Might specifically, to match his power, to work as a sandbag, to negate all of All Might's incredibly powerful punches. So All Might and Nomu get into a battle, and as I said previously, All Might is not he can only stay in his hero form for a certain amount of time, and that time is always getting shorter throughout the series. So it looks like he's going to be defeated, but at the last second, he musters up his power as a hero, and he pummels the fuck out of this Nomu thing, sends it flying through the facility, and at this point, the other UA teachers show up and all chase off the villains. They shoot Tomura like a shit ton of times, and he manages to, escape with Kurogiri. All the other villains manage to get defeated, and it's revealed that it was actually Tomura's mysterious boss behind the scenes, his sensei, that sent him to go and try to kill All Might. And although he says that the time wasn't quite right to kill All Might, that time will come once again. Right about here is where Season 1 of the anime ends, so we're moving on to all manga material. So the next arc is the Sports Festival arc, where all the students of UA gather together to compete against one another and show off their abilities. Let's see, we're focusing a lot on Todoroki Shoto here. He's sort of like the true class prodigy, like the #1 in his class in terms of utilizing his quirk, even more so than Bakugo. His ability is fire and ice. One half of his body, he can manipulate ice, the other half is fire. And if that sounds OP, it is. It totally is. Sasuke, eat your heart out. This guy is... damn. Another student that's heavily spotlighted in the Sports Festival, and one of my favorite characters in the series, if not my favorite, is Tokoyami Fumikage, the kid with the raven head up here. He's a very striking appearance. His quirk is Dark Shadow. He has this other sentient being that's in the form of a shadow that comes out of him. The more light that shines on him, Dark Shadow's power is mitigated, and the more darkness that's around him, it gets stronger, sometimes to the point that he can't even control it. Spoilers. But he's a very interesting character, and as you can tell just by me describing it, his quirk is very diverse, basically always having a two-man squad wherever he goes, and if there's a lot of darkness around him, then he's pretty much really OP. There's a lot of events that occur in the Sports Festival, so I can't go over everything, but some of the highlights include Izuku fighting against a student that has a brainwashing quirk, and that fight goes down pretty cool. We get to find out a little bit of hints about the secrets of One for All there. Ochako fights against Bakugo in a very emotional battle there. I'm not going to spoil who wins or who loses, but it's a very intense arc, even though it does have a kind of a slow start for me. Alright, so the next arc is referred to as the Hero Hunter arc. So all of the students are sent on assignments to basically go and job shadow. They're supposed to pick out one of the heroes to find, and then they're going to go and, just follow them around and figure out what being a pro hero really entails. All Might recommends that Izuku go see his old sensei, a man by the name of Gran Torino, who's this really kind of old, short dude, kind of reminiscent of Yoda. His quirk Jet allows him to fly around and shoot gusts of air, and despite his size, just like Yoda, you don't want to fuck with him, not really. It's here that Izuku finally figures out a way to fight without breaking his goddamn bones every time he uses it. He learns a power-up ability called Full Cow, which disperses the ability of One For All throughout his body. So instead of like copying All Might and focusing all of his powers on a single punch or a single flick, he disperses it throughout his body. Of course, this means that his punches and kicks aren't as strong as when he puts all of his oomph into it, but it means that he can go into sort of like an augmented power-up form without worrying about his body getting broken in the meantime, and he masters this with Gran Torino. But the main thread of this arc kicks off with the eponymous Hero Hunter. His name is Stain. He has the ability to immobilize anybody by licking their blood, which also means he's very susceptible to AIDS and shit. Ida's brother, Ingenium, which is a professional hero, gets attacked and defeated by Stain, and Ida is out for blood. He's a very by-the-book kind of guy. He's the class president, and, the idea of his older brother being defeated by a Hero Hunter that would disregard the rules and just go and, attack other heroes indiscriminately, that pisses Ida off something fierce, and he goes to confront him, and it doesn't really work out too well. He kind of gets dropped on his ass, but Izuku and Todoroki both show up, and they manage to fight off Stain, and Stain eventually gets apprehended and gets taken away, although his actions sort of inspire other villains to join up with Tomura and his League of Villains, and Stain's not done yet. He's incarcerated right now, but he's probably going to show up later, and his hero hunt had a big impact on all the villains in the world. So at the tail end of this arc, we also find a very important moment where All Might explains to Izuku the main villain of at least this point in the series. The main villain that caused All Might his injuries 6 years ago, the leader of the Hero Association, Tomura's sensei, and he goes by the name of All For One. That's right, the opposite of One For All. One For All is a quirk that allows each user to give it a little bit more of their own power to be passed on to the next person, and that person gives it a little bit their power, and that passes on, so it's something that gets stronger the more people that have it. All For One is a quirk that just allows you to steal other quirks, and this guy right here has stockpiled a incredible amass of quirks, and he's been around for as long as the phenomenon has been a thing, so he's obviously over probably like 90 or 100 years old, and he has some sort of quirk that's keeping him going, and so Izuku basically learns the gist about this and how much of a scary guy he's going to be, and that he might have to fight him someday. Like, this is the final goal basically for Izuku to take on All For One, though not right now because he's not even close to being on that level yet. And All Might, of course, still has some of his powers, but at this point in the story, he can only maintain his hero form for about 50 minutes or so, so the times for changing of eras are a-coming. Alright, so the next arc is a brief one. It's a end-of-term test arc, so all of the students are paired up once again, except this time they're not fighting against each other, they're fighting against the pro heroes that are their teachers. Now, the teachers do have a handicap, they're restrained with these, sort of heavy weights and stuff, but basically the goal is to either render the hero incapacitated or to escape a set area. Izuku is paired up with Bakugo in this test, and you can probably imagine how that goes. They don't get along at first, but you know what? I'm not even going to spoil it, but it's a very, very nice ending to this trial, especially since the person they're fighting against is All Might. Some of the other students that get focused on here are Jiro and Kota. They fight against the hero Present Mic, who has a really powerful voice that he can send out shockwaves. Jiro has a similar quirk which allows her to send these earphone jack things into speakers, and she takes the sound of her heartbeat in her body and she reverberates it hundreds of times over to make it really loud. Kota has the ability to talk to animals. You also have the students Mineta and Sero. Sero has the ability to shoot tape from his body. Sounds lame, I know, but it's actually pretty useful. And Mineta has the ability to take off these parts of his hair that are basically like grapes, and he could stick them to things. Okay, that one's kind of useless, but okay, rare cases it's useful, but most of the time it's useless. Most of the reason you like Mineta is just because he's the pervert character of the series. Anyway, they fight against a pro hero named Midnight, who has the ability to emit sleeping gas from her body, and they manage to come out of that alive, and there's this really epic moment between Mineta and Sero there. That's one thing I like about the series, is that you have all these students in this class. You have probably close to 20 students, and they're going to be spotlighted at one time or another. Not all of them yet, but they are going to be having their own moments at some points. Even the students that you don't expect anything from, they're going to have their moments, and I'm really looking forward to how that stuff's going to play out. And that brings us to the training camp arc. This is another big one. This is another really big arc with the series, along with the rescue training one and the hero hunter arc. So in this arc, the students are on break now, and they're going to a mountain retreat in the middle of the forest where they think is safe to work as sort of like a training camp to perfect their quirks and get them stronger. However, this time it's attacked with the newly revamped Hero Villain Association, and there's a lot of new recruits here. Like I said, the thing with Stain sort of inspired other villains to join up with Tomura, and it goes freaking intense. They emit this poison gas all over the area. A lot of students and teachers alike get knocked out. Bakugo ends up getting kidnapped. You know, I can't cover every single thing here, but Izuku gets a shining moment. Tokoyami gets a shining moment. All Might isn't there at all, so he can't really do anything, although the other teachers get their moments as well. It's just a really interesting arc. A lot of shit happens, and it kind of is at the point in the series where everything gets knocked into the next level, you know, where beyond this, we're dealing with some serious foes here with the newly revamped Villains Association. The end of that arc does not end on a high note at all. Like I said, Bakugo gets kidnapped, Izuku uses way beyond his normal level of power, and his body is wrecked. Other students are knocked out by the nerve gas, essentially, and so the students all rally together, and the ones that can still stand, and Izuku, even though despite still being somewhat injured, manages to come along, and they're going to try to get Bakugo back. At the meantime, the pro heroes are uber pissed because they attacked the UA students, and now the entire population is worried about the students are not safe in this school. So the Hero Association pretty much all bands together. You have All Might, the #1 hero. You have Endeavor, the #2 hero. Best Genius, the #4 hero. All the strongest heroes in the area, they team up and they go to raid the villain's hideout. They locate it and they bust into this place, and there is no mercy at all. The pro heroes have the upper hand. Meanwhile, the students go and infiltrate the lab where a bunch of Nomus are being created, and they try to take that place out. It looks like they both succeed on both fronts, when all of a sudden, All for One makes an appearance, and this guy right here, yeah, you don't want to fuck with this guy right here. He fights against All Might in Gran Torino. All Might is pushed to his absolute limit. It is a amazing fight. Like, I cannot, describing it here does not even do justice. You need to read the fight between All Might and All for One. Like, if you're just starting with this series, please, it's around chapter 90 this shit goes down, so this is your high point. Right now in the series, this is the most exciting thing that happens, bar none. So when you start with chapter 1 right after this video or whatever, this is the thing you're building to. I guarantee you, you will not be disappointed. Oh man, it is insane. Like, this guy has dozens of quirks at his disposal. He can walk in the air, he can fly, he can create giant bone drills in his arms, he can increase his muscles to insane sizes, combining all these quirks he stole over the years. All Might pushes One for All to its very limit. He goes into his skeleton form and still, pushes out his muscles for one awesome final attack. United States of Smash! And he brings down All for One in the fucking curb stomp to end all curb stomps. He does not kill him, though. He's still alive. He gets incarcerated in a huge facility, the same facility that Stain is incarcerated in. But this victory comes at a price because All Might has completely run the course. The fumes of One for All are now gone. He can no longer maintain his muscle form, and the symbol of peace, All Might, is no more. But that's not a bad thing because he's going to dedicate his life now to training Izuku and teaching him the ways of the hero, so he can become the true next symbol of peace. And this arc doesn't, it ends on a higher note than it does with the previous arc. They managed to rescue Bakugo and all this commotion. but it's still it's a very emotional moment, and it brings us into the current story arc right now, the provisional license exam arc. The next term of school starts. All of the students are relocated to dorms within UA to keep them safer from villain attacks, and the next step is try to get their provisional license, which will allow them to become basically semi-pro heroes. And that's where we are right now. We're nearing the end of the first stage of this exam. Not only UA is participating in it, but a bunch of the other superhero schools in the world are there. Shiketsu High is probably the one that's giving them the most problems right now in the reviews that I've been giving. And that brings us up to right now. So for further adventures in My Hero Academia, keep watching my weekly reviews of the series. And if this is something that you think that you would be interested in from watching this recap, check it out. I really recommend it. I think the art style is great. I think the plot of it is good. It doesn't have, I mean, it has its faults, of course, every series does. It does kind of fall into the traditional shonen cliches at times. But I really genuinely feel that this series is going to be around for quite some time, and that the story is going to get even better from here as these students improve. It's sort of like a rite of passage sort of series, a coming-of-age story. So I hope you guys enjoyed this summary and this recap. Go and read My Hero Academia if you so choose. If not, I don't even know why you still made it. Maybe you just like hearing me talk. If you made it to this mark in the video at the very end and you're just like, nah, I don't like this series, then what are you even doing here? I don't even know. Whatever. Later, guys. Plus Ultra!